Stand up, woman. Can't you do anything right? The words sliced through the living room like a machete, followed by the sound of a body hitting the floor and ceramic shattering against tiles. Soup splattered across the polished marble, red, thick, spreading like spilled blood. Yutun lay there, her wrapper soaked, her hands trembling, her dignity pooling around her knees along with the agusi soup she'd spent 3 hours preparing. Above her, her husband Tun stood with his chest heaving, his finger still pointed down at her like she was something he'd scraped off his shoe. His friends, 5 men sprawled across the leather couches, erupted into laughter. Not the uncomfortable kind. The cruel, entertained kind. The kind that said they'd been waiting for this show all evening. "Guy, you show her," one of them shouted, slapping his thigh. "That's how you handle a wife," another added, raising his beer bottle in mock salute. Welcome to Stories by Tino, where we bring you real-life African family dramas that will leave you breathless. Thank you so much for your continued support. You are the reason we keep telling these stories. Before we continue, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Are you in the US? Jamaica? Nigeria? The UK? Let us know. Now, let's get back to Yutun's story. Yutun remained on her knees, head bowed, tears mixing with the soup on the floor. Her body shook, not from pain, though her hip throbbed where she'd landed. She shook from something deeper. Something breaking inside her chest that had been cracking for years. This wasn't the first time. But something about tonight felt different. Maybe it was the audience. Maybe it was the way they laughed, like she was a circus act, like her pain was their Friday night entertainment. Maybe it was the fact that her 2 children, Damalola and Beezy, were upstairs, and she knew they could hear everything. Or maybe it was the way one of the friends, Segan, the quiet one who always avoided her eyes, had his phone out, recording. She saw it. The red recording dot. The way he tried to hide it behind his beer bottle but kept the camera pointed at her. Her humiliation was being immortalized. "Baby, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the laughter. "I'm sorry." The pot was heavy, and I. "You what?" Tund cut her off, his voice rising. "You embarrass me in front of my friends? You make me look like I married a clumsy goat?" More laughter. Louder this time. Yutun's fingers curled into the wet tiles. Her wedding ring, the one she'd worn for 12 years, caught the light. She stared at it, and for the first time in her marriage, she wondered what she'd been holding on to all these years. Love? Or just the memory of what love was supposed to feel like? Slowly, she rose to her feet. Her knees cracked. Her wrapper clung to her legs, heavy with soup. She didn't bother wiping her face. She didn't apologize again. She didn't even look at Tund. Instead, she looked at his friends. One by one. Segan quickly lowered his phone, guilt flashing across his face. The others avoided her gaze, suddenly finding their beers very interesting. Only one, Kunnel, Tund's childhood friend, met her eyes. And in that brief moment, she saw something unexpected. Pity. She hated it more than the laughter. Without a word, Yutun turned and walked toward the staircase. Her bare feet left wet prints on the marble, evidence of her humiliation trailing behind her like breadcrumbs. "Where are you going?" Tund called after her, his voice still sharp. "You haven't cleaned up this mess." She didn't answer. She climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. Behind her, the laughter resumed, but it sounded hollow now. Forced. As if even they knew something had shifted in the room. When she reached the top of the stairs, she paused. Her children's bedroom door was cracked open. Through the gap, she could see Damalola, her 14-year-old son, standing frozen with his hand on the doorknob. His face was pale, his eyes wide with shock and something else, anger. Behind him, 10-year-old Beezy sat on the bed, hugging her stuffed elephant, tears streaming down her cheeks. They'd heard everything. They'd seen everything. Yitun's heart shattered into smaller pieces. She tried so hard to hide the sight of their father from them. She'd made excuses, covered bruises with makeup, smiled through the pain. But tonight, there was no hiding. Tonight, the mask had been ripped away in front of an audience. "Mommy!" Damalola started, his voice cracking. "Go to bed," Yitun whispered, her voice empty. "Both of you. Now." But now. She didn't wait for them to argue. She continued down the hallway to the master bedroom, stepped inside, and locked the door behind her. The click of the lock echoed like a gunshot. The bedroom was large, expensively furnished, filled with all the trappings of a successful marriage. A king-sized bed with imported sheets. A walk-in closet. A plasma TV mounted on the wall. Awards and certificates from Tun's engineering firm lined the dresser. From the outside, they looked like the perfect family. The successful couple. The beautiful home in Lekki Phase 1. The expensive cars. The private school fees paid in full every term. But behind closed doors, Yitun had been dying slowly for years. She walked to the bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. Her face was a mess, tears, soup, shame. Her wrapper was ruined. But it was her eyes that frightened her the most. They were empty. Hollow. Like she'd already left her body and was watching herself from somewhere far away. She turned on the shower and stepped under the cold water fully clothed, letting it wash away the soup, the tears, the humiliation. But no amount of water could wash away what had just happened. Downstairs, the laughter continued. She could hear them through the floor, loud, obnoxious, celebrating Tun's dominance over his wife like it was a victory. But something in Yitun had changed tonight. Something had died. And in its place, something cold and calculating was beginning to take root. She didn't know it yet, but that push, that moment of ultimate disrespect in front of witnesses, would become the catalyst for everything that followed. Not because she wanted revenge in the traditional sense. Not because she planned to hurt him back. But because she finally realized something she'd been too afraid to admit for 12 years. She deserved better. And she was going to take it. 2 hours later, long after Tun's friends had stumbled out into the night and her husband had passed out drunk on the couch, Yitun lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She hadn't changed out of her wet wrapper. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't cried anymore. She just lay there, thinking. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up and saw a message from an unknown number. "Unknown, I'm sorry for what happened tonight. You didn't deserve that. I've deleted the video from my phone. But I think you should know, I wasn't the only one recording. Segan." Yitun's heart stopped. She read the message 3 times, each word sinking deeper into her consciousness. I wasn't the only one recording. Which meant the video was out there. Somewhere. In someone else's hands. Her humiliation wasn't just private anymore. It was documented. Digital. Permanent. She should have felt panic. She should have felt horror. But instead, she felt something unexpected. Power. Because if the video existed, it meant she had evidence. Proof. Ammunition. And for the first time in 12 years, Yitun smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a woman who just realized she'd been playing the game wrong all along. The rules were about to change. Downstairs, she heard Tun stumble to his feet, cursing as he knocked over an empty bottle. His footsteps were heavy on the stairs. He was coming to bed. Yitun turned off her phone and closed her eyes, her body perfectly still. When Tun entered the room, reeking of beer and cigarettes, she didn't move. She didn't acknowledge him. She didn't flinch when he collapsed onto the bed beside her, his hand reaching for her hip in that entitled way he always did when he wanted to make up after hurting her. She just lay there, her back to him, her eyes open in the darkness. Silent. Still. Already gone. What would you do if your husband pushed you in front of his friends? Hit like if you've experienced humiliation in your marriage, and comment below where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The silence started the next morning. Not the angry, sulking kind of silence that screamed for attention. Not the dramatic, door-slamming silence that begged for apology. This was different. This was the silence of absence. The silence of a woman who had simply stopped being present, even though her body remained in the house. Yetund woke up at 5:30, same as always. She showered, dressed in a simple house dress, and went downstairs. But she didn't go to the kitchen. She didn't start preparing Tun's breakfast. She didn't lay out his clothes for work. Instead, she made breakfast only for Damalola and Beezy. Scrambled eggs. Toast. Fresh orange juice. She set it all on the dining table with the same care she always had, but only 2 plates. Only 2 glasses. Only 2 napkins folded neatly beside the forks. When the children came downstairs, their eyes were red and puffy. Neither had slept well. Damalola looked at his mother with concern, opening his mouth to speak, but Yetund shook her head gently. "Eat," she said softly. "You'll be late for school." "Mummy, about last night," Beezy started. "Eat," Yetund repeated, her voice still gentle but firm. "We'll talk later. I promise." The children ate in silence, stealing glances at their mother, who sat with them but didn't eat. She just watched them with a strange new expression on her face, not sad, not angry, just distant. Tund emerged from the bedroom 20 minutes later, his shirt half-buttoned, his tie in his hand. He walked into the dining room expecting to see his breakfast waiting, expecting the usual morning routine. Instead, he found an empty place at the head of the table. He stopped, confused. "Where's my food?" Yetund didn't look at him. She stood up, collected the children's empty plates, and walked to the kitchen. "Yetund, I'm talking to you," Tund said, his voice rising with irritation. "Where is my breakfast?" She returned with her car keys and her handbag. "Come on, children. Let's go. You'll be late." "What about me?" Tund demanded. "I have to eat." Yetund finally looked at him. Her eyes were calm, empty of emotion. "There's bread in the pantry. The toaster is on the counter. You have hands." She walked past him toward the door. Tund stood there, stunned. In 12 years of marriage, Yetund had never, not once, left the house without making sure he was fed. Even on days when she was sick, even on days when they'd fought, she'd always prepared something for him. "Are you mad?" he shouted after her. "You think you can disrespect me like this?" But she was already gone, herding the children into her car. Tund grabbed his phone and called her. It rang once, then went to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. He threw his phone onto the couch and stormed to the kitchen, muttering curses under his breath. He made himself toast, burned toast, and ate it standing over the sink, his anger simmering. This was just her being dramatic, he told himself. She'd get over it. She always did. By tomorrow, everything would be back to normal. But tomorrow came, and nothing changed. Days passed. Then a week. Yetund continued her silent retreat. She cooked, but only for the children. She cleaned, but only the children's rooms and the common areas they used. Tund's side of the bedroom accumulated dirty clothes. His bathroom sink filled with stubble from his razor. His shoes remained wherever he kicked them off. She stopped washing his clothes. Stopped ironing his shirts. Stopped asking about his day. When he came home from work, she didn't greet him. When he tried to touch her, she moved away, not violently, not with protest, just smoothly, like water flowing around a rock. When he spoke to her, she responded only when absolutely necessary, her answers short, emotionless. Yes. No. I don't know. The house became a strange, tense place. The children watched their mother's transformation with a mixture of worry and awe. Damalola, especially, noticed how his father would try to provoke a reaction, slamming doors, raising his voice, making demands, but their mother remained perfectly calm, perfectly distant. It was driving Tund crazy. He'd grown accustomed to Tund's tears, her pleas, her eventual forgiveness. This new version of her, this silent, unreachable woman, was something he didn't know how to handle. "What's wrong with your mother?" he asked Damalola one evening, his frustration boiling over. Damalola looked at his father with an expression that made Tund uncomfortable. It wasn't fear. It wasn't respect. It was something closer to disappointment. "You pushed her," Damalola said quietly. "In front of your friends. You pushed Mummy." "That was between me and her," Tund snapped. "It's not your business. We heard everything, Daddy. We saw everything." Tund's face flushed with anger, or was it shame? "Go to your room." "You hurt her," Damalola continued, his voice cracking. "You always hurt her. And we're not stupid. We know." "I said go to your room." Damalola left, but not before Tund caught the look in his son's eyes. The same look Tund had given him that night. The look that said, "I don't respect you anymore." 2 weeks after the incident, Tund's friends came over again for their usual Friday hangout. But this time, the atmosphere was different. Tund didn't come downstairs. She stayed in the bedroom with the door locked, leaving Tund to entertain his guests alone. "Where's your wife?" Cunnel asked, looking around. "I thought she'd at least bring us drinks." "She's resting," Tund lied, his jaw tight. The friends exchanged glances. They all knew what had happened. They'd all been there. And in the days since, whispers had started circulating. Segan was notably absent. "Guy, that video." One of them started carefully. "What video?" Tund demanded. "The one from that night. It's spreading." Tund's blood ran cold. "What do you mean spreading?" "Someone shared it in a WhatsApp group. Then it went to another group. And another. Now it's on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere." Tund grabbed his phone and searched his name. His stomach dropped. There it was. The video. Grainy but clear enough. Him shouting. Him pushing. Tund falling. The pot shattering. The laughter. And the comments. Thousands of them. "This is disgusting. That poor woman. Men like this deserve to be exposed. I hope she leaves him. No woman deserves this. This is why women are afraid to speak up. Look at his friends laughing. Someone find this woman and help her." Tund's hands shook. His face appeared in freeze frame after freeze frame, his finger pointed down at his wife, his expression twisted with contempt. He looked like a monster. "Who posted this?" he whispered. His friends shifted uncomfortably. No one wanted to answer. "Who posted this? Does it matter now?" Cunnel said quietly. "It's out there. Everyone's seen it." Tund's phone buzzed. A message from his boss. "Tund, we need to talk. Monday morning. My office. This is serious." Another buzz. His mother. "My son, what have you done? The whole family is calling me." I'm so ashamed. Another buzz. His younger sister. I can't believe this is you. How could you do this to Yatund? She's always been so good to you. The messages kept coming. Colleagues. Distant relatives. Old friends. Church members. Everyone had seen it. Everyone knew. His friends started making excuses to leave early, their discomfort palpable. Within an hour, the house was empty again. Tun sat alone in his living room, staring at his phone as the video played over and over. Each view count climbing. Each share spreading his shame further. Upstairs, Yatund lay in bed, her phone silent beside her. She'd seen the video hours ago. Segan had sent her a message warning her it was circulating, apologizing profusely for his role in recording it. But she didn't feel violated. She felt liberated. Because now, the world knew. Now, there were witnesses beyond that room. Now, her truth was undeniable. She heard Tun's heavy footsteps on the stairs. Heard him pause outside the bedroom door. Heard his hand on the doorknob. Locked. Yatund, he called, his voice strained. We need to talk. She didn't respond. Please. Open the door. Silence. I'm sorry about what happened. But this video, it's ruining everything. You need to help me fix this. You need to tell people it's not what it looks like. Yatund almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she rolled over, her back to the door, and closed her eyes. Outside, Tund pressed his forehead against the wood, his breath ragged. Yatund, please. I'm begging you. But the only sound that came from the room was silence. Cold, devastating silence. And in that moment, Tund realized something terrifying. His wife had stopped fighting back not because she was weak, but because she'd stopped caring. And a woman who stopped caring was far more dangerous than a woman who screamed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think Yatund should do next? Should she forgive him or continue her silent treatment? Comment below. The video went viral. Not the kind of viral that fades after a few days. The kind that burrows into the internet's consciousness and refuses to let go. The kind that spawns think pieces, hot takes, and endless debates in comment sections across every social media platform. By Monday morning, Tund's face was everywhere. He'd become a symbol. The poster child for domestic disrespect. The example every woman used when explaining why they'd left their marriages. The cautionary tale mothers shared with their daughters about the kind of man to avoid. Hashtag Justice for Yatund started trending. Feminist groups picked up the story. Podcasters dissected it. Radio hosts debated it. Someone even created a petition calling for Tund's company to take action. The petition got 50,000 signatures in 2 days. When Tund arrived at his office that Monday, the receptionist wouldn't meet his eyes. His colleagues whispered as he passed. By the time he reached his desk, his boss's secretary was already waiting. Mr. Okonkwo wants to see you. Now. Tund's boss, Mr. Okonkwo, was a stern man in his 60s who'd built the engineering firm from nothing. He valued 2 things above all else, competence and reputation. Tund had just destroyed one of them. Sit down, Mr. Okonkwo said without looking up from his computer. On the screen, the video played on mute, Tund pushing Yatund, the pot falling, the laughter. Tund's stomach churned. Sir, I can explain. Explain? Mr. Okonkwo finally looked at him, his eyes cold. Explain how you thought it was acceptable to put your hands on your wife? Explain how you brought such shame to this company? It was a private matter that got blown out of proportion. Private? Mr. Okonkwo's voice rose. You pushed your wife in front of witnesses who recorded it and shared it with the world. That's not private. That's public stupidity. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. We've received dozens of calls. Clients threatening to pull contracts. Partners questioning our values. The board had an emergency meeting this morning. Tun's heart sank. What did they decide? You're suspended. Indefinitely. Without pay. Pending a full investigation into whether this behavior extends to your workplace conduct. But I've done nothing wrong at work. This has nothing to do with my job. It has everything to do with your job, Mr. Okonkwo said sharply. You represent this company. And right now, you represent everything we stand against. Go home, Tund. Fix your life. And pray the board decides you're worth keeping. Tund left the office in a daze, his security pass deactivated, his work laptop confiscated, his colleagues staring as he walked the corridor of shame. Outside, a small group of women stood with signs. Domestic abuse is not entertainment. Justice for Tund. Real men don't push their wives. They saw him and started chanting. Camera phones came out. More documentation. More evidence of his fall. Tund ran to his car and drove home, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. At home, Tund was having the best day she'd had in years. Not because she was celebrating Tund's downfall, but because, for the first time, she felt seen. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing. Friends she hadn't spoken to in months called to check on her. Women from her old church group sent messages of support. Even strangers reached out through social media, sharing their own stories, offering resources, telling her she wasn't alone. Sister, I went through the same thing. Here's the number for a good lawyer. Please don't go back to him. You deserve better. There's a shelter for women who need help. They can protect you. My cousin works at a legal aid foundation. They help women for free. Call them. The outpouring of support was overwhelming. For 12 years, Tund had suffered in silence, believing she had nowhere to turn, no one who would understand. But now, an entire community had formed around her pain. She saved every message. Every contact. Every resource. She was building an army without even trying. Meanwhile, her children were processing everything in their own ways. Damalola had become fiercely protective, checking on his mother constantly, making sure she ate, making sure she was okay. BZ, younger and more confused, clung to Tund like she might disappear. Mummy, are we going to be okay? BZ asked that afternoon, curled up next to Tund on the couch. Tund stroked her daughter's hair. Yes, baby. We're going to be more than okay. Is Daddy in trouble? Daddy made choices. Now he's facing the consequences of those choices. Will he hurt you again? Tund paused. It was the question she'd been asking herself for years. The question that had kept her trapped in fear, in hope that things would change, in the belief that she had to stay for the children, for the family, for the image of perfection they'd built. But something had shifted. The push had been the catalyst, but the viral video had been the liberation. Now, the world was watching. Now, she had witnesses. Now, she had power. No, Tund said firmly. He won't hurt me again. I won't let him. When Tund came home that afternoon, hours earlier than usual, he found the house eerily quiet. No cooking smells. No television sounds. No signs of life. He walked through each room, his anxiety building. Finally, he found them, Tund, Damalola, and BZ, sitting together in the family room, watching a movie. They didn't acknowledge his presence. I lost my job, Tund announced, his voice cracking. Well, suspended. But it's the same thing. Tund didn't look up from the screen. Did you hear me? Tund's voice rose. I said I lost my job. Because of that video. Because of you. Now she looked at him. Her eyes were calm, steady, completely unbothered. Because of me, she repeated softly. I didn't push anyone. I didn't laugh at anyone's pain. I didn't record anything. You did this to yourself, Tund. If you'd just been more careful. If I'd been more careful? Tund stood up slowly, and something in her posture made Tund take a step back. I was serving you and your friends. I was doing what I've done for 12 years, taking care of you, feeding you, making sure you looked good in front of everyone. And you pushed me. You humiliated me. You turned my pain into entertainment. I was drunk. You're always drunk. You're always angry. You're always finding reasons to make me feel small. Her voice remained calm, but the words cut like knives. The only difference this time is that people saw who you really are. Tund's face flushed red. So what? You're just going to let me lose everything? You're not going to defend me? Defend you? Tund almost smiled. Why would I defend the man who's been attacking me for years? I'm your husband. You stopped being my husband the moment you chose your ego over my dignity. The children watched in silence. Damalola stood up, positioning himself between his mother and father, a small gesture, but one that spoke volumes. Tund noticed. His own son, protecting his mother from him. Fine, Tund spat. Be like this. But when the bills don't get paid, when the school fees are due, when there's no food on the table, remember it was your fault. Your silence did this. Actually, Tund said calmly, my father bought this house. It's in my name. The car I drive? My uncle gave it to me as a wedding gift. The children's school fees? I've been paying them from my savings account for the last 3 years because you kept forgetting. Tund stared at her, stunned. He'd never known. He'd never asked. He just assumed everything was his because he was the man, the provider, the head of the household. But she'd been holding up the foundation all along. So no, Tund, Tund continued. We won't starve. We won't suffer. You might. But we won't. She gathered the children and walked past him toward the stairs. Wait, Tund called out, his voice desperate now. Tund, wait. We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll stop drinking. I'll change. I promise. She paused on the bottom step and looked back at him. You've made that promise before, she said quietly. I don't believe you anymore. Then she was gone, taking the children with her, leaving Tund alone in the living room with nothing but his regrets and his rapidly crumbling life. His phone buzzed. Another message. This time from his mother. I'm leaving your father's house. I can't stay there with everyone asking about you. I'm going to stay with your sister. Please, my son, fix this mess before it destroys our entire family. Tund sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. Everything was falling apart. And the worst part? He finally understood that Tund wasn't fighting him. She wasn't screaming or throwing things or demanding attention. She was simply walking away. And somehow, that was the most devastating revenge of all. What do you think will happen next? Will Tund change, or is it too late? Drop a like and comment your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter. Tund started changing. Not overnight. Not dramatically. But slowly, deliberately, like a butterfly emerging from a cocoon she'd been trapped in for 12 years. It started with small things. She bought new clothes, nothing extravagant, but modern, fitted, colorful. For years, she dressed to be invisible, to avoid drawing Tund's criticism or unwanted attention. Loose dresses. Muted colors. Anything that wouldn't trigger his jealousy or his comments about her trying too hard. But now, she wore what she wanted. A bright yellow blouse. Fitted jeans. Earrings that dangled and caught the light. She went to the salon and got her hair done, not the simple protective styles she'd been wearing, but an elegant bob with subtle highlights. She looked like herself again. The woman she'd been before marriage had slowly erased her. Next came the evening classes. A friend from her old job had mentioned a certificate program in business management at the university. Yutun had always dreamed of going back to school, of finishing what she'd started before marriage and children had derailed her plans. She enrolled without telling Tund. 3 evenings a week, she dropped the children at her sister's house and drove to campus. She sat in lecture halls with students half her age and felt more alive than she had in years. She participated in discussions, completed assignments, made new friends. She was rebuilding herself, piece by piece. Then she joined a women's support group, a community organization that met every Saturday morning. Women of all ages, all backgrounds, sharing their stories, lifting each other up. Some were abuse survivors. Some were widows. Some were simply women who'd lost themselves in the service of others and were trying to find their way back. Yutun found her tribe. For the first time, she spoke openly about her marriage. About the years of verbal abuse, the constant criticism, the way Tund had systematically broken down her confidence until she believed she was worthless without him. The women listened. They understood. They didn't judge. And they helped her see that what had happened to her wasn't normal. Wasn't acceptable. Wasn't something she had to endure. "You're not just surviving anymore," one of the older women told her. "You're preparing. And when you're ready, you'll know exactly what to do." Meanwhile, Tund was unraveling. His suspension stretched into weeks. His boss wouldn't return his calls. His colleagues avoided him. The professional network he'd spent years building crumbled overnight as people distanced themselves from the controversy. Business contacts stopped responding to emails. Invitations to industry events suddenly dried up. Even his own friends, the ones who'd laughed that night, had gone silent. Nobody wanted to be associated with the man from the video. His mother had moved out, unable to face the neighbors' whispers and pitying looks. His sister called occasionally, but their conversations were strained, full of disappointment and thinly veiled accusations. The isolation was suffocating. But worse than all of that was watching Yutun transform while he deteriorated. He'd watch her leave the house in the evenings, dressed nicely, smiling at her phone. He'd hear her laughter on calls with her sister, her friends, people he didn't know. He'd see the way the children gravitated toward her, how they lit up when she walked into a room, how they'd started flinching away from him. She didn't need him anymore. And that realization terrified him. "Where are you going?" he demanded one Wednesday evening as she grabbed her car keys. "Out," Yutun replied simply, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "Out where? With who? Does it matter? You're my wife. I have a right to know." Yutun turned to face him, her expression neutral. "Do I ask where you're going when you leave? Do I question your movements? Do I demand explanations? That's different." "Why? Because you're the man?" She picked up her handbag. "I'll be back by 9. The children have eaten. Their homework is done. They know not to open the door for strangers. You can't just leave me here. Watch me." And she did. She walked out the door, got into her car, and drove away, leaving Tund standing in the doorway like a stranger in his own home. He wanted to scream. To break something. To demand she come back and remember her place. But he couldn't. Because deep down, he knew. He'd lost the right to make demands the moment he'd put his hands on her. The children's transformation was perhaps the most painful part for Tund. Damolola barely spoke to him anymore. When forced to interact, his responses were clipped, cold, respectful only in the most technical sense. He'd started calling his father sir instead of daddy, a distance that cut deeper than any insult. Beezy was more open with her feelings. She'd begun having nightmares, waking up crying, calling for her mother. When Tun tried to comfort her once, she'd shrunk away from him, trembling. "Don't touch me," she'd whispered. Those 3 words haunted him. His own daughter was afraid of him. One evening, Tun overheard Damalola talking to his mother in the kitchen. "Mummy, when are we leaving?" Tun froze outside the door. "Leaving?" Yatun's voice was gentle. "Everyone at school knows about the video. They keep asking me questions. Some of them say mean things about Daddy. I want to go somewhere new. Somewhere he isn't." Silence. Then Yatun's response, quiet but firm, "Soon, baby. Very soon." Tun's blood ran cold. She was planning to leave. To take his children and go. He burst into the kitchen. "You're not taking my children anywhere." Damalola jumped. Yatun simply turned, her expression unchanged. "Lower your voice," she said calmly. "You're scaring Beezy. Answer me. Are you planning to leave? To take my children?" "They're my children too," Tund. "And unlike you, I've actually been taking care of them. I'm their father." "Being a father is more than biology," Yatund interrupted. "It's about being present. Being safe. Being someone they can trust. You stopped being that a long time ago." "So what? You're just going to erase me from their lives?" "No," Yatun said. "You did that yourself. I'm just acknowledging reality." She took Damalola's hand and led him out of the kitchen, leaving Tund alone with his rage and his fear. That night, one of Tund's old friends, Segan, the one who'd originally recorded the video, showed up at the house. He looked uncomfortable, guilty, shifting his weight from foot to foot on the doorstep. "Can I come in?" he asked. Tund wanted to slam the door in his face. But he was desperate for any human connection, even from the man who'd helped destroy his life. They sat in the living room, a 6-pack of beer between them that Tund had bought days ago but hadn't touched. He was afraid to drink now, afraid of what he might do or say. "I came to apologize," Segan started. "For that night. For recording. For everything." "Bit late for that," Tund muttered. "I know. But I also came to tell you something." Segan leaned forward. "I've been seeing your wife around. At the university. At community meetings. At the women's center downtown." Tund's head snapped up. "You're following her?" The lawyer's office was quiet, professional, and smelled faintly of coffee and leather-bound books. Yatun sat across from Mrs. Ngozi's, one of the most respected family law attorneys in Lagos. She'd been recommended by 3 different women from the support group, each with their own story of how Mrs. Ease had helped them escape impossible situations. "Let me be clear about something," Mrs. Ease said, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed the folder Yatun had brought. "You have an exceptionally strong case." She spread documents across the mahogany desk. "The viral video alone is damning evidence of physical aggression and public humiliation. But you've also brought bank statements showing your financial contributions to the household, property documents proving the house is in your name, witness statements from neighbors who've heard altercations, and medical records from 3 separate incidents over the past 5 years." Yatun had been thorough. Every time Tund had hurt her, the twisted wrist from 2 years ago, the bruised ribs from a shove down the stairs, the split lip she'd explained away as clumsiness, she'd gone to the doctor. She'd told herself it was for the children's sake, in case something happened to her. But now, those records were evidence. "Your children are also old enough to testify if needed," Mrs. Ease continued. "Though I'd prefer to avoid putting them through that trauma. The court tends to consider children's preferences at their ages, 14 and 10. They want to stay with me," Yatun said quietly. Damalola has made that very clear. Beezy is afraid of her father now. Mrs. Ease nodded, making notes. Here's what I recommend. We file for legal separation first, with a petition for exclusive possession of the matrimonial home. Since it's in your name, that should be straightforward. We'll also file for a protection order, full custody with supervised visitation rights for the father, and child support. Child support? But he's suspended from work. Doesn't matter. He has assets. Savings. A car. He's an educated professional who will work again. The court will determine an appropriate amount based on his earning capacity, not his current employment status. Yatund absorbed this information, her mind racing. For so long, she believed she was trapped. That leaving meant poverty, shame, starting over with nothing. But she'd been holding all the cards all along, she just hadn't known it. What about his rights? Yatund asked. To see the children? He'll have rights, yes. But supervised visitation, at least initially. Given the documented abuse and the children's expressed fears, the court will prioritize their safety and emotional well-being. Mrs. Ease leaned back in her chair. Mrs. Yatund, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen women in much worse situations with far less evidence. You've been preparing for this, maybe without even realizing it, for years. I just wanted to protect myself. Protect my children. And you did. Now let's make it official. Mrs. Ease pulled out a fresh stack of papers. I'll need you to sign some documents today. Then we'll file everything by the end of the week. Once the papers are served, things will move quickly. Yatund picked up the pen. Her hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what she was about to do. 12 years of marriage, ending with a signature. But as she thought about the push, the laughter, the years of small cruelties that had accumulated like poison in her soul, her hand steadied. She signed her name. While Yatund was securing her future, Tund was watching his present collapse. His suspension had turned into termination. The board had voted unanimously. His reputation was too damaged, they said. Clients were uncomfortable. The company's values had to mean something. He'd lost his job permanently. His savings were dwindling. The bills were piling up, his car payment, his credit cards, his club membership fees. He'd lived beyond his means for years, using credit to maintain the appearance of success while assuming there would always be another paycheck. Now there wasn't. He tried reaching out to former colleagues, fishing for leads on new positions. But his calls went unreturned. His emails disappeared into voids. The professional network he thought was solid turned out to be built on sand. His mother called one evening, her voice heavy with disappointment. Tund, your father and I are very worried. I'm handling it, Mama. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you've lost your job, your wife won't speak to you, your children are afraid of you, and the whole world thinks you're a monster. The word hit him like a slap. I'm not a monster. Then what are you? What kind of man pushes his wife in front of guests? What kind of father makes his children fear him? Mama, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You became like too many men. You thought being the head of the house meant being a dictator. You thought providing money gave you the right to abuse. You thought your wife would stay silent forever. Tears burned in Tund's eyes. I loved her, Mama. I still love her. Love isn't something you say, my son. It's something you do. And you did the opposite. His mother's voice softened. Get help. Real help. Go to therapy. Talk to your pastor. Figure out why you hurt the people you claim to love. Because right now, you're on a path to losing everything that matters. After the call ended, Tund sat in the darkness of his living room, a room that felt less like home every day. Upstairs, he could hear Yutun moving around in the bedroom they still technically shared, though they hadn't slept in the same bed in weeks. He heard the children's voices, their laughter, the sounds of a family life he was no longer part of. He thought about Segan's warning, about Yutun building a case, about legal action. He needed to talk to her, to beg her, to convince her that he could change, that they could fix this, that 12 years of marriage was worth fighting for. He climbed the stairs and knocked on the bedroom door. Yutun, please. Can we talk? Silence. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Therapy. Anger management. Anything. Just don't give up on us. The door opened. But it wasn't Yutun, it was Damilola. His son looked at him with eyes far older than 14. Eyes that had seen too much. She's not here, Damilola said. She went out. Where? I don't know. She doesn't tell me everything. Unlike you, she respects my privacy. The dig was subtle but sharp. Damilola, I know you're angry. Angry? Damilola's voice rose. I'm not angry, Dad. I'm disgusted. I watched you push my mother. I watched your friends laugh at her pain. I watched her cry herself to sleep for years, thinking we couldn't hear through the walls. Yutun stumbled back as if physically struck. Every time you raised your voice, every time you slammed a door, every time you made her feel small, we saw it. We heard it. And we hated you for it. Damilola. Beezy has nightmares now. Did you know that? She wakes up crying, saying she's scared. She's 10 years old, and she's afraid in her own home because of you. Tears streamed down Damilola's face now, years of suppressed emotion finally breaking free. You were supposed to protect us. To protect her. Instead, you became the thing we needed protection from. He wiped his eyes roughly with his sleeve. So no, Dad. We don't want to hear your apologies. We don't want to hear your promises. We just want you to leave us alone. The door closed in Yutun's face. He stood there, his son's words echoing in his mind, each one a nail in the coffin of the man he used to be. Yutun returned home just before 10 that evening. She'd been at the lawyer's office, then stopped by her sister's house to discuss logistics. Where would they stay during the transition? What school arrangements needed to be made? How would they handle the inevitable questions from relatives? Everything was being planned with military precision. She found Yutun waiting for her in the living room, his face haggard, his eyes red. We need to talk, he said. There's nothing to talk about. Yutun, please. I know I've been terrible. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm begging you, give me a chance to make this right. She looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing. No anger. No love. No hope. Just emptiness where 12 years of marriage used to live. You had chances, Yutun. Hundreds of them. Every time you raised your hand, every time you raised your voice, every time you chose your pride over our peace, those were chances. And you wasted every single one. I'll change. No, you won't. Not for me. Maybe someday, for yourself, you'll become better. I hope you do. But I won't be here to see it. You're leaving. It wasn't a question. Yes. When? Soon. Yutun's face crumpled. The children will be fine. Better than fine. They'll be free. I'm their father. Then be one, Yutun said simply. From a distance. With supervision. Until you prove you're safe. That's what the court will decide. Court? Yutun's blood ran cold. You're taking me to court? You'll be served papers soon. She moved toward the stairs. I suggest you get a lawyer. Yitund, wait. But she was already gone, ascending the stairs with her head high, her shoulders back, moving toward a future that no longer included him. Tun sank onto the couch, his world finally, completely shattered. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Your wife deserves better. So do your children. Let them go. The message included a link to the viral video, now with over 5 million views. 5 million people had witnessed his shame. 5 million people thought he was a monster. And maybe he was finally beginning to realize they were right. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for next chapter. What do you think will happen when Tun gets served? Will he fight back or finally accept defeat? Comment below. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. Tun heard the knock at the door and opened it to find a courier holding a clipboard and a manila envelope marked with the seal of the Lagos State High Court. Tundaladapo? The courier asked. Yes. Sign here, please. Tun's hand shook as he scrawled his signature. He knew what this was. He'd been expecting it, dreading it, but somehow the reality of holding the envelope still hit him like a physical blow. He closed the door and stared at the package for several minutes before finally tearing it open. Petition for legal separation. Petition for exclusive possession of matrimonial home. Petition for protection order. Petition for full custody with supervised visitation. Petition for child support. The words blurred together. Legal jargon mixed with devastating facts. His failures documented in black and white. Witness statements. Medical records. Financial disclosures. Bank statements showing Yitun's contributions to the household that he'd never acknowledged. And attached at the back, printed screenshots from the viral video, timestamped, verified, undeniable. The evidence was overwhelming. The case was airtight. He was going to lose everything. Tun's legs gave out. He sank to the floor, the papers scattering around him like accusations, and for the first time since that night, since the push, since the video, since his entire life began unraveling, he broke down completely. Not the angry tears of a man who felt wronged. Not the frustrated tears of someone who believed he'd been misunderstood. These were the tears of genuine recognition. Of a man finally seeing himself clearly and hating what he saw. He destroyed his family with his own hands. Upstairs, Yitund heard the knock, heard the door close, heard the long silence that followed. She knew what had arrived. Her lawyer had called yesterday to confirm the papers had been sent. She waited, listening. Part of her expected rage, doors slamming, things breaking, his voice raised in fury. That was the Tun she'd known for 12 years. But there was only silence. After 30 minutes, curiosity got the better of her. She came downstairs and found him on the floor, surrounded by legal documents, his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. She'd imagined this moment would feel triumphant. Powerful. Like justice being served. Instead, she just felt tired. Tund, she said quietly. He looked up, his face wet with tears, his eyes bloodshot. He looked 10 years older than he had a month ago. Is this really what you want? He asked, his voice broken. To destroy everything we built? I'm not destroying anything, Yitund replied calmly. I'm leaving a situation that was destroying me. There's a difference. But the children will be protected. Will be loved. Will grow up knowing that abuse isn't normal, that fear isn't love, that they deserve better than what they've witnessed in this house. Tun gestured helplessly at the papers. Supervised visitation? You think I'm dangerous to my own children? Are you not? Yitund's voice was gentle but firm. Beezy has nightmares, Tund. She flinches when you move too quickly. Damalola can barely look at you. They love you because you're their father, but they don't feel safe with you. And until you get help, real help, supervised visits are what's best for everyone. I'll do it, Tun said desperately. Therapy. Anger management. Whatever the court wants. Just, don't take them completely away from me. I'm not taking them away. You are. Yutun picked up one of the scattered papers, a medical report from 3 years ago documenting her bruised ribs. Every time you chose violence over conversation, you took yourself away from them. Every time you chose your ego over their peace, you created this distance. I'm just making it official. She set the paper back down and looked at him with something almost like pity. The court date is in 3 weeks. I suggest you find a lawyer and get yourself into therapy before then. It might help your case. What if I fight this? Tund asked, a flash of his old defiance returning. What if I contest everything? Yutun's expression didn't change. Then we'll go to trial. Your children will have to testify about what they've seen and heard. The video will be played in court. Every witness who's heard you shout, seeing you aggressive, watched you belittle me will be called. Your colleagues who know about your temper. Your friends who were there that night. Every piece of evidence will be examined publicly. She paused. Or you can cooperate. Accept the separation. Work on yourself during supervised visitation. Show the court and your children that you're willing to change. And maybe, eventually, you'll earn back the privilege of being in their lives unsupervised. The choice was clear. Fight and lose publicly, or surrender with some dignity intact. Tun looked down at the papers again, seeing his life reduced to legal terminology and damning evidence. I need time, he said weakly. To process this. To figure out where to go, what to do. You have 2 weeks, Yutun said. That's when the court order for exclusive possession takes effect. After that, you'll need to find somewhere else to stay. This is my home. No. It's my father's house. It's in my name. It was always my home. You just lived here. The truth of that statement hung in the air like smoke. Everything Tun had thought he owned, the house, the security, the power, the control, had been an illusion. He'd been a guest in Yutun's life, and he'd abused the privilege until she revoked it. That evening, Tun finally did something he should have done months ago. He called a therapist. Not because he believed he needed it. Not because he'd had some profound epiphany. But because his lawyer, a sharp woman named Mrs. Funmaleo who'd agreed to take his case despite its obvious weaknesses, had told him bluntly, your only chance is to show the court you're actively working on yourself. Start therapy immediately. Get documentation. Show progress. Otherwise, you'll lose everything and have no chance of ever getting it back. The therapist, Dr. Ibrahim, was a calm man in his 50s who specialized in anger management and domestic violence prevention. Their first session was painful. Tell me about the incident that led to the viral video, Dr. Ibrahim said. Tun tried to minimize it. It was a mistake. I'd been drinking. I was stressed about work. She dropped the pot, and I just reacted. You pushed your wife in front of your friends because she dropped a pot? It wasn't just about the pot. What was it about, then? Tun struggled to articulate it. The anger that had been simmering for years. The resentment when things didn't go his way. The need to assert dominance, to remind everyone, especially Yutun, who was in charge. I don't know, he finally admitted. I felt disrespected. Because she dropped a pot? Because she wasn't perfect. Because in front of my friends, she made a mistake, and it made me look bad. Dr. Ibrahim leaned forward. Do you hear what you're saying? You assaulted your wife because her human error reflected poorly on you. You prioritized your image over her dignity. Over her safety. The words were like punches, each one landing, exposing the ugliness Tund had been avoiding. "I never thought of it that way," he whispered. "Most abusers don't," Dr. Ibrahim said gently. "They justify. They rationalize. They blame the victim. But the truth is simple: you chose violence. And now you're facing the consequences." They talked for the full hour. By the end, Tund felt raw, exposed, like every layer of protection had been stripped away. "This is just the beginning," Dr. Ibrahim said as Tund prepared to leave. "Real change takes time. Commitment. Honesty with yourself that will be painful. Are you willing to do that work?" Tund thought about his children. About the way Beezy flinched. About the disgust in Damilola's eyes. About Tund's empty stare, as if she were looking through him rather than at him. "Yes," he said. "I have to." 2 weeks later, Tund packed his belongings into suitcases and boxes. Tund and the children stayed at her sister's house during the move, sparing everyone the awkwardness. He moved through the rooms like a ghost, collecting his clothes, his documents, his few personal possessions. Everything else, the furniture, the kitchen items, the decorations, belonged to Tund. Had always belonged to her. He'd just never noticed. He'd found a small one-bedroom flat in a less expensive neighborhood. It was a far cry from the house in Lekki Phase 1. No marble floors. No leather furniture. Just basic necessities and the echo of his failures. On his last day in the house, he stood in what had been their bedroom and looked around. The bed where they'd slept together for 12 years. The closet where her side was now empty. The bathroom where he could still smell her perfume faintly in the air. He'd had everything. And he'd thrown it away. His phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Ibrahim. "Remember, you can't change the past. But you can choose who you become next. See you Thursday." Tund picked up his last box and walked out of the house, pulling the door closed behind him with a soft click. The sound of an ending. And maybe, if he worked hard enough, the beginning of something different. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for the final chapter. Will Tund truly change, or is it too late? Comment your predictions below. 6 months later. The courtroom was smaller than Tund had imagined. Clinical. Impersonal. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a harsh, unflattering glow that seemed designed to expose truth rather than flatter it. He sat at the defendant's table with Mrs. Fun Maleo, his lawyer, dressed in his best suit, one of the few things he hadn't sold to make rent. Across the aisle, Tund sat with Mrs. Ease, looking composed, dignified, wearing a navy blue dress that made her look both professional and strong. She didn't look at him once. The past 6 months had been the hardest of Tund's life. Living alone in his tiny flat, working odd consulting jobs that paid a fraction of what he used to earn, attending therapy twice a week, anger management classes every Saturday. He'd stopped drinking completely. Started exercising. Began journaling his thoughts and feelings the way Dr. Ibrahim had suggested. He was trying. Really trying. But trying didn't erase the past. And it didn't change what was about to happen. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The Honorable Justice Okafor presiding. Justice Okafor was a woman in her early 60s with gray hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that missed nothing. She'd seen hundreds of cases like this one. Maybe thousands. She'd heard every excuse, every justification, every plea for second chances. She sat down, adjusted her glasses, and opened the case file. Case number 2025 FCT 08942. Tund Oladapo vs. Tund Oladapo. Petition for legal separation, custody, and protection order. She looked up. "I've reviewed all submitted documents, including witness statements, medical records, financial disclosures, and video evidence." Tund's stomach twisted. The video. Always the video. It had become the defining moment of his life, playing on loop in courtrooms and comment sections, forever immortalizing his worst moment. Mrs. Oladapo, Justice Okafor addressed Yatund. You're seeking legal separation, full custody of your 2 children with supervised visitation for the father, exclusive possession of the matrimonial home, child support, and a protection order. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Yatund said, her voice steady. Mr. Oladapo, the judge turned to Tund. You've submitted documentation of therapy attendance and anger management classes. You're contesting the protection order but accepting the other terms. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Tund replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Justice Okafor leaned back in her chair, studying both of them. I don't typically make speeches in these proceedings, but this case has been highly publicized. So I want to be clear about something. She looked directly at Tund. Mr. Oladapo, the evidence against you is overwhelming. The video alone would be sufficient grounds for everything your wife is requesting. The medical records, the witness statements, the testimony from your own children, all of it paints a picture of a man who systematically abused his power within his marriage. Tund felt every word like a physical blow, but he didn't look away. He owed her that much. He owed Yatund that much. However, the judge continued, I also note that you've taken recent steps, to address your behavior. 6 months of consistent therapy. Perfect attendance at anger management classes. Letters from both Dr. Ibrahim and your anger management counselor indicating genuine progress. She paused. The question before this court isn't whether you've been abusive. The evidence makes that undeniable. The question is whether you pose a continued threat to your wife and children, and what arrangements serve the best interests of the minor children involved. Justice Okafor looked down at her notes. I've also reviewed private testimony from both children, conducted separately with a court-appointed child psychologist. Tund's heart seized. His children had spoken to the court. About him. About everything they'd witnessed. Demolola, age 14, expressed fear of his father's temper but also a desire for a relationship with him, conditional on continued therapy and supervised settings. He stated, and I quote, I want my dad to get better. But I don't want him around my mom or my sister until he proves he's safe. The words cut deep. His own son, protecting his mother and sister from him. BZ, age 10, expressed anxiety about her father. She's been having nightmares. She's in play therapy now to address trauma responses. She did not express a desire to see her father at this time, though the psychologist noted this may change as she heals. Tund's eyes burned with tears. His baby girl, traumatized because of him. Justice Okafor set down the documents. Here is my ruling. The courtroom fell silent. The petition for legal separation is granted. The marriage between Yatund Oladapo and Tund Oladapo is hereby legally dissolved, pending the mandatory waiting period for final divorce proceedings. Tund had expected it, but hearing it officially still felt like a death. 12 years, gone. Erased with a judge's signature. Exclusive possession of the matrimonial home is granted to Mrs. Yatund Oladapo, as the property is registered in her name and represents her primary residence with the minor children. Full custody of both minor children is granted to Mrs. Yatund Oladapo. Yatund's shoulders relaxed slightly. She'd won. Completely. Mr. Tund Oladapo is granted supervised visitation rights, to be exercised bi-weekly at an approved visitation center, contingent on continued therapy and anger management participation. These visits will be reviewed every 3 months, with the possibility of unsupervised visitation after 1 year, subject to therapeutic progress and the children's comfort levels. Tund nodded numbly. It was more than he deserved. He knew that. Child support is set at 40,000 naira per month, to be paid by Mr. Oladapo to Mrs. Oladapo for the care and maintenance of the children. This amount may be adjusted based on Mr. Oladapo's future employment status. As for the protection order, Justice Okafor paused. Given Mr. Oladapo's documented efforts at rehabilitation and the lack of any incidents in the past 6 months, I'm granting a modified order. Mr. Oladapo is prohibited from contacting Mrs. Oladapo except through legal representatives or the court-approved co-parenting app. He is prohibited from approaching within 100 meters of her residence or workplace. Any violation will result in immediate arrest and possible criminal charges. She looked at Tund again. Mr. Oladapo, you've been given an opportunity that many men in your situation don't receive. Your wife could have pursued criminal charges. She chose not to. The viral attention to your case could have destroyed you completely. You survived it. You've been given a chance to be in your children's lives, albeit under supervision. Justice Okafor's voice softened slightly. Don't waste it. Continue your therapy. Continue your classes. Become the father your children deserve. Because if you appear before me again on similar charges, I will not be lenient. I understand, Your Honor, Tund said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you. Case dismissed. All parties are bound by this ruling effective immediately. The gavel fell with a sharp crack that echoed through the courtroom like a period at the end of a very long, painful sentence. Outside the courthouse, Tund stood in the sunlight, breathing deeply. It was over. Officially, legally, finally over. Her sister, who'd been waiting outside, hugged her tightly. How do you feel? Free, Tund said simply. For the first time in 12 years, I feel free. She looked back at the courthouse doors, half expecting Tund to emerge and try to talk to her. But he didn't. He was probably still inside, processing everything with his lawyer. She'd meant what she'd said in the courtroom. She hadn't pursued criminal charges not because she'd forgiven him, but because she wanted this to end. Wanted to move forward. Wanted to focus on healing rather than revenge. The viral video had been revenge enough. The whole world had seen him at his worst. His reputation was destroyed. His career was in shambles. His family relationships were fractured. She didn't need to add prison time to that list. She just needed to be free of him. The children are waiting, her sister reminded her gently. Should we go pick them up from school? Tund nodded. Yes. Let's go tell them it's finally over. Inside the courthouse, Tund sat alone on a bench in the hallway, his head in his hands. Mrs. Funmaleo had left after giving him copies of the court orders and reminding him about the co-parenting app he needed to download. Now he was alone with his thoughts, with the weight of everything he'd lost. His phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Ibrahim. Remember what we talked about. This is not an ending. It's a transition. You have a chance to become better. Take it. Tund stared at the message for a long time. He thought about the past 6 months. The lonely nights in his tiny flat. The therapy sessions where he'd had to confront ugly truths about himself. The anger management classes where he'd learned that his father's violence, which he'd witnessed as a child, had shaped him more than he'd realized. The slow, painful process of understanding that hurt people, and that he'd been hurt, and then he'd hurt others, continuing a cycle that needed to end with him. He thought about his children. Demolola's words, I want my dad to get better. His son still believed in him, even after everything. That was a gift he didn't deserve but desperately wanted to earn. And Beezy. His little girl, traumatized and afraid. He'd done that to her. His own daughter, scared of him. The thought made him physically ill. But Dr. Ibrahim was right. This wasn't an ending. It was a choice. He could let this destroy him completely, or he could use it as a foundation to rebuild himself into someone better. Someone his children wouldn't fear. Someone they might, eventually, respect again. Tund stood up slowly, his body feeling heavy with the weight of his failures but also, somehow, lighter without the burden of denial. He'd spent 6 months admitting the truth to himself. Today, the court had made it official. He was an abuser. He had destroyed his family. He had been the monster everyone said he was. But maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to be that person forever. 3 months after the court ruling, Tun sat in a small supervised visitation room at the family center. It was painted cheerful yellow, with toys scattered around and large windows that let in natural light. A social worker sat discreetly in the corner, observing. The door opened, and Damalola walked in. Just Damalola. Beezy wasn't ready yet. The therapist said she needed more time. Tun's heart broke at the thought, but he understood. He'd caused the fear. It was his responsibility to be patient while she healed. "Hi, Dad," Damalola said carefully, sitting down across from him at a small table. "Hi, son." Tun's voice cracked. "Thank you for coming. Mom said it was my choice. I chose to come." They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Tun didn't know where to start, how to bridge the ocean of hurt between them. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "For everything. For all of it. For hurting your mother. For scaring you and Beezy. For being the kind of father you had to protect your family from." Damalola's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't look away. "Why did you do it, Dad? Why did you hurt Mom?" It was the question Tun had been asking himself in therapy for months. "Because I was angry," he said honestly. "Because my father was violent with my mother, and I learned that's what men do. Because I felt powerless in other parts of my life and took it out on the people who couldn't fight back. Because I was wrong and broken, and I didn't know how to be better." He swallowed hard. "But those are reasons, not excuses. There's no excuse for what I did. I hurt the people I loved most in the world, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life." Damalola wiped his eyes. "Are you really getting better? Or is this just for show?" "I'm really trying," Tun said. "Therapy twice a week. Anger management every Saturday. I'm reading books about breaking cycles of abuse. I'm learning about healthy relationships, healthy communication, healthy expressions of anger. I'm trying to understand who I was so I can become someone different." "Do you still love Mom?" The question hung in the air. "I love who your mother is," Tun said carefully. "But I lost the right to be with her. I lost the right to her love. What I feel doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that she's safe, that she's happy, that she's free. And that you and Beezy can heal." Damalola nodded slowly. "I want to forgive you someday, Dad. But I'm not there yet." "That's okay," Tun said, tears streaming down his face. "You don't owe me forgiveness. Ever. If you get there, wonderful. If you don't, I understand. I'm just grateful you're willing to sit here with me today." They talked for the rest of the hour, carefully, tentatively, like strangers learning each other for the first time. It wasn't the relationship they'd had before. That was gone, destroyed by Tun's own hands. But maybe it could become something new. Something healthier. Something built on honesty instead of fear. When the session ended, Damalola stood to leave. At the door, he paused. "Keep going to therapy, Dad," he said quietly. "Keep getting better. Maybe eventually, Beezy will want to see you too." After he left, Tun sat alone in the yellow room, crying quietly while the social worker pretended not to notice. His son had just given him hope. It was more than he deserved, but he was determined to earn it. Meanwhile, in her new apartment, smaller than the house in Lekki but filled with light and peace, Yatun sat with her children at dinner. The apartment was in a good neighborhood, close to their schools, with a small balcony where Beezy had started a little garden. It wasn't luxurious, but it was theirs. Safe. Calm. Free from tension and fear. "How was it?" Yatund asked Damalola gently. He shrugged. "Okay, I guess." He cried a lot. Apologized a lot. Said he's really trying to change. Do you believe him? Damalola thought about it. I don't know. Maybe? He seemed different. Smaller, somehow. Less scary. Yatund nodded. She wouldn't influence their feelings about their father. They needed to process their own relationship with him, separate from hers. That's fair. You don't have to decide today how you feel. You're allowed to be confused, or angry, or hopeful, or all of those things at once. What about you, Mom? Beezy asked quietly. Do you hate Daddy? Yatund considered the question carefully. Did she hate him? Once, maybe. In the immediate aftermath, in the raw pain of it all, she'd felt something close to hatred. But now? No, baby. I don't hate him. I'm sad about what happened. I'm sad that he hurt us. But I don't hate him. I hope he gets better. I hope he becomes the father you both deserve. I just can't be part of his life while he does that work. She looked at both her children, these beautiful souls she protected as best she could. What I feel most is free. And grateful that we're all safe now. And proud of how strong and brave you both are. Beezy leaned against her mother's shoulder. I like it here, Mommy. It's quiet. Me too, baby. Me too. That night, after the children were asleep, Yatund sat on her balcony with a cup of tea, looking out at the city lights of Lagos. Somewhere out there, Tund was in his small flat, hopefully doing the work to become better. Somewhere out there, the viral video still existed, a permanent record of the worst moment of their marriage. But here, in this moment, Yatund was free. She'd survived. She'd escaped. She'd rebuilt. And that was enough. This wasn't a victory story, she realized. It was never about winning or losing. It was about survival. About choosing yourself when staying meant dying slowly. About breaking cycles so your children didn't inherit your pain. Her phone buzzed. A message from one of the women from her support group. Just left my husband. Can we talk? I'm scared, but I remembered your story and I knew I could do it. Yatund smiled through tears and typed back immediately. Yes. Call me anytime. You're not alone. You're going to be okay. Because that's what her story had become. Not just her escape, but permission for others to escape too. The viral video that had exposed her humiliation had also exposed a truth that too many women lived with in silence. And now, one by one, they were finding their voices. Finding their courage. Finding their way out. 1 year later. Tund sat across from Dr. Ibrahim in their weekly session. Beezy agreed to see me, he said, his voice filled with cautious hope. Just for 30 minutes. But she agreed. That's significant progress, Dr. Ibrahim acknowledged. How do you feel? Terrified. Grateful. Undeserving. Tund laughed without humor. All of it at once. You've put in the work, Tund. 18 months of consistent therapy. Perfect attendance at anger management. You've held down steady employment for 6 months now. You pay your child support on time every month. You've respected all the boundaries set by the court and by Yatund. It doesn't erase what I did. No, Dr. Ibrahim agreed. It doesn't. But that's not the goal. The goal isn't to erase the past. It's to ensure you don't repeat it. To break the cycle. To become someone your children can have a healthy relationship with, even if it looks different than before. Tund nodded. I'll never have what I had. I know that. Yatund will never take me back. I don't deserve that. But if I can just be a good father, a safe father, maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything, Dr. Ibrahim said gently. And somewhere in Lagos, in a bright apartment filled with laughter and plants and healing, Yatun sat with her children, living proof that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes survival is the victory. Sometimes peace is the revenge. And sometimes, the best thing you can do for the people who hurt you is simply refuse to let them hurt you anymore. This was not her victory. It was her escape. And that was enough. Thank you for watching this chapter of Stories by Tino. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience and transformation. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you deserve peace. You deserve safety. You deserve better. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from, and what did you think of Yatun's journey? Until next time, stay strong.